The topic that we're looking at this morning is climate action. And it's in the context of the UN, and the judging program has been framed by, and one of the components of the judging was looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. And there's many of those, and 17 of those were set out in 2015. And the 13th goal set out 5 targets to create action to combat climate change. I'm just going to run through those. They included strength and resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related disasters, building knowledge and capacity to meet climate change, to integrate climate change measures into policies and planning, and to implement the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and to promote mechanisms to raise capacity for planning and management. Now, there is a lot more behind each one of those, and it has been a key factor of what many people on this in the Super Connect for Good have looked at in some detail. So I think the opportunity here is in this session is to explore some of the principles and values behind that, in particular the settings of some of the organisations that have made it through to the later rounds or that are participating in the programme. Now, Andy and I are here just to introduce ourselves. We're here as part of the Innovate UK Edge team. My own background is that I have a product development, a sort of professional experience behind me, mainly in healthcare and medical devices. And as part of that, the Innovate UK Edge team approached me in 2020 as part of the support they were providing me. And then this led to me joining their innovation and growth specialist team later on that year. And I've been working with them for over the last year. And during which I've also been supporting several environmental monitoring and the climate impact delivery solutions. This is supporting SMEs in this sector, and been very excited and challenged by the issues, some of which we saw just now, that they're not only technical, environmental, but also ethical issues in this space. So I'm very pleased to be chairing this meeting with you. Innovate UK have a range of services, and we are particularly looking, Innovate UK Edge is a specific theme from within the wider remit of Innovate UK and UKRI. And we are exclusively focused on innovation-led companies with high growth potential. And certainly some of you here today represent that community. We are a national service within the UK, and we draw on world-class resources and connections from within and beyond the UK. So we definitely have an international perspective. And our intention is to work in a bespoke way. In this dynamic environment, we need to be responsive and adapt to the services that clients and customers and our populations are definitely look for. So today I'm joined by a number of panelists. We've got Julie Baker, Head of Enterprise and Climate Engagement Partnerships, Martin Chilcott, Chairman and CEO of Manufacture 2030, Aaron Danand, Founder and CEO of Electric Miles and the regional winner for the South of England, and Andy Taylor, Team Leader for Yorkshire and Humber, Innovate UK Edge, and Francisco Benedito, forgive me, Benedito. Sorry, you'll put me right in a moment. Founder and CEO at Climate Trade. And then Douglas Elder, Head of Pre-Sales, Product and Intelligent Growth Solutions, IGS, and regional winner for Scotland and Wales. So I've stumbled over that a little bit, but forgive me, and please make your contributions. But I was really excited by the humble observation of the City Beats presenter, who said, what is the purpose of people on the planet today? And let's explore some of those topics through some of these questions now. As climate action is one of the great areas of importance to our planet today and tomorrow. And as we've seen in Scotland at the COP26, there are some real challenges and some people taking it seriously. So let's have a look at our first question that we've been posed here. Climate action is huge and complex, with many people actually believing and taking action, believing that there should be something done and taking action in a way that they believe they can make a difference. And one of the things that we're interested in looking at is how can smaller organizations get involved in this movement and what can they contribute? So Julie, is Julie still with us? I'm looking at from NatWest. Is Julie with us? Have we had a Julie with us?
I think Julie's having problems getting in.
Right. Okay. So if Martin, maybe you can talk a little bit. How do you get on as an SME looking to bring about change?
Well, so Manufacture 2030, we've been working with global brands and helping them collaborate with their suppliers to reduce their scope 3, their emissions in their upstream supply chain. And a lot of those companies are small businesses in those supply chains. So we have a lot of experience of working with those companies. If you are part of a supply chain, as a lot of SMEs are, then really look hard at what your customers are doing and what they're saying. One of the biggest challenges small businesses find when it comes to dealing with carbon emissions reductions and with climate issues is actually being able to justify prioritizing it. Now, this is changing very, very rapidly. And a really good place to look at, if you're in a B2B supply chain, is what is your customer doing? And try and align with their needs. Because if you don't align with them, you will stop doing business with them at some point. It is becoming such a big driver for major corporations and public companies that if you're a small business and you do not align with their objectives for reductions, you will be out of business as far as they're concerned at some point in the future. So really look at what your B2B customers are doing. Look at if you're a consumer business, look at what your consumers are wanting and what they're driving at. I mean, there's nothing like starting with your market, is there, to find the reason. So that will give you the energy and the focus as to how to prioritize these actions. And then really you've got to be looking at your own footprint. You've got to be looking at your supply chain. You've got to be looking upstream and downstream of yourself. And there's some really good, just from a practical point of view, some really great resources to look out there. You might think of the SME Climate Hub. You can look that up online. It's a full of tools that as an SME can get you going. And the Carbon Trust still, it doesn't give government granted consultancy anymore, but it does have a lot of information out there about how to make your first steps forward.
Thank you, Martin, and certainly some links to follow up on there. Doug, could you outline for us some of the work of IGS in this area and any sort of recent involvement in COP26 and insight from that?
Yeah, so IGS is obviously, we're developing vertical farming technology. Now, there's no getting away that the old concept sunlight is free, but it does come at a cost. And that was really sort of one of the main challenges for us is how do we start bringing in what is an energy intensive industry to make it a sustainable green tech effectively. Sounds very at odds. So it was a big focus for us was about using energy better so that we can actually develop a technology that becomes an asset and not a burden, and bringing the core technologies behind that to allow us to integrate better into energy systems, but also focus on disrupting the existing food systems, which have a number of challenges, but also optimizing those where we can and benefit what already works in that system, but make that system itself better. So that's glass and field production, polytunnel production. They are good food systems if they're done appropriately without the large impact. But by providing better materials at the beginning, so better food crops into those systems, starter plants and things like that, we're able to actually optimize traditional agriculture in a way that makes it more sustainable, as well as using our own technology behind that to enable us to do that. But that comes from power reduction. It comes from reducing chemical inputs, water consumption, all of those things that have the big impact. If you look at the south of Spain, they are sucking the land dry and it's having a huge impact on that. So how do we improve those processes and move away from foodstuffs as a nation or as a society that is impacting the way that the planet is able to grow? But also improve the processes. So we're looking at trees and things like that being grown in as seedlings at high volume to be able to repopulate the forestry and create products for sustainable forestry. But most important to this is across industry collaboration. We can't do this ourselves. We need to work with growers. We need to work with energy providers to come up with the most sustainable solutions. And that's really what COP26 represented. It was not a sales opportunity for us. It was never going to be, but it was about initiating the general public into this new technologies, getting them to challenge us on the sustainability claims, and then making sure that policymakers and businesses were able to sort of start that interaction that's needed to drive towards a better food production system.
So did you feel you made some progress with that, with some of those negotiations?
So we had Extinction Rebellion in, so that's always interesting. But they were really actually quite on board with what we're trying to do, and that's a huge leap forward. If we can take, the ones that really are against any sort of movement that's of technology that is going to be a negative effect, which they absolutely should be, we have to be able to be part of that solution with them, and they have to support it, and they should challenge us. We should have to stand up to those claims.
Yeah. So did you feel as though you made some you bridged some gaps with them a little bit in the time?
So I think we were unknown to them at the point of entry, but it was good to have that relationship and start going out there, because you don't want to be caught off guard with that, fairly out there opinions versus the middle ground. So we didn't want to get too caught up in that, but it's good to take these things head on and be challenged.
You're at least in a space together. That's really good.
Exactly.
Aaron, Julie, we're mastering the technology.
Hello.
I know I've seen.
We are waiting. We're waiting in the audience, trying to get in, but listening in to some amazing things being discussed here.
Great stuff. All right, so they've let you in from the audience, so you've heard the discussion so far. So Julie, can you give us some comment then on why on the NatWest position on climate change and climate action in particular?
Yes, certainly, Marcus. And climate change is important to all of us, but it's especially important to an organisation like a bank, because we're only as successful as the community we serve. And just a few weeks ago, before COP, we released a Springboard to Sustainable Recovery report, which showed that if the UK economy transitions to net zero, it will create an extra 130,000 jobs, produce 30,000 new businesses, and result in an estimated £160 billion to the UK economy. So really important that an organisation like NatWest helps sort of the businesses it serves. And there's 5 key areas, and I'll whistle through these. I won't go into detail. But number 1 is cleaning up our buildings and helping our colleagues and our clients clean up their buildings as well. And it may surprise you to know that on our Coots building and the Strand, on the roof, we've got a garden and we've got solar panels, and we want that to become the norm with a lot of our buildings throughout the UK. Number 2 is clean energy. Not we use renewable energy, but we're again working with our clients to transition them onto renewable. The 3rd area is clean transport. All of our vehicles now are becoming electric when we replace them, but again, having some good deals to ensure our colleagues transition to electric vehicles, and again, our customers, and looking at partners to work with that can help us do that. Number 4, a really important area, carbon tracking. We need to measure our carbon footprint to make sure that we are transitioning in the right way and improving. So we're working with a couple of partners, one called Kogo and one Microsoft, on the carbon in the early days, so that we can work with both personal customers and business clients to ensure that we start tracking the carbon we're using. And then finally, and probably the number 1 for a bank, of course, is green finance initiatives.
So there's the topic. If us as businesses have got work in one of those areas, will you look favourably on us and give us some good rates and support, financial support, in taking these technologies forward? Julie, go on.
Well, that's the question, and I am delighted that we did announce at COP a £100 billion allocated funding for climate and sustainable sort of businesses, and that will include businesses that back sort of renewables and wind, home and public buildings. We're already looking at mortgage products that looks at homes that are EPC rating of A or B. And then, of course, there's electric vehicles we've already talked about, and some special deals on those. But absolutely, we're looking at it in progress. We're on a journey, as are all of us, but definitely look more favourably.
Brilliant. We'll come back to finance in a question in a minute. Aaron and Andy, do you want to add any sort of immediate comments to what we were talking about there about climate action? Aaron, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I was fortunate to pitch today, and if any of you saw my pitch, we are looking at is heart of sort of climate change, right? I mean, traditionally, with so much fossil fuel generation has broken our environment. obviously EVs are seen as a solution, as Julie alluded. I mean, where 30% of carbon emission comes from the transport. However, I think the way it's going, it's just not scalable, because charging is on demand. It's not happening at the right time, at the right places, and the grid just cannot cope up with it. And hence, like I founded Electric Miles with my background in the energy sector, and worked in 15 years looking at the energy trading, forecasting, distribution, and being an EV driver myself. I'm like, wow, this is a big problem to be solved here. And I think the important part, what we believe is it's going to get, it's already quite complex, and it's going to get more and more complex, and I think it should be a technology-led solution. So that's where we've built. We're very proud on what we have built and the products out there, which kind of does it for the driver at their charging at the right time. At the same time, we need to understand that this is a new market. Drivers are very anxious. The EV drivers especially, they don't know if they're going to have enough charge the next day. There is a lot of misconception around charging and around the infrastructure. There is enough infrastructure. However, hey, they feel there isn't enough. But at the same time, so heart of, we're trying to solve that heart of the problem. And if we do this correctly, then the EV adoption can go at the right rate, and that is fundamental for us to meet the regulatory requirement, and to ban ICE vehicle and ban fossil fuel, which is going to get us tracked to the COP26 outcomes and wishes which were put forward.
Explore a little bit about the sort of the implementer. Andy, any thoughts from you so far on this? Comments?
Yeah, so for those that missed the introduction, I'm a team leader at Innovate UK Edge in the north of England, and we work with small businesses and large businesses, but predominantly high growth or high growth potential businesses. And there's a team of over 40 specialists who help businesses to develop strategy on a variety of different topics, net zero being one of them. And in terms of the approach we take, quite often it's about helping the businesses to turn on the radar, in terms of opening their ears and understanding what's going on in the wider world, and who best to talk to, and how to understand the challenges. But also we help them to find the best support. So, we reassure them that they're not alone. There is support out there, and it's, support that doesn't necessarily cost very much or cost anything. But that support will help you to develop a strategy around what the business should be doing. So, the simple stuff like, do a pestle analysis, do a SWOT analysis, the basic things around the subject of net zero, and understanding what it means for your business, and what the greater context can have in terms of influence on your business. And once you've talked about it and you've thrashed it around a bit, we facilitate those kind of programs. We suggest getting it on paper and then communicating it to the whole business. It's as simple as that, really.
A sense of
what we're here
putting it, as we've been talking about there, sort of understanding what's going on, and actually what Martin was talking about before, about understanding the needs of your supply chain and the needs of your market and context.
Yeah, absolutely.
Francisco, could you talk to us a little about what you're doing with climate change, the climate trade, and in particular about the affordability of, how do we take on board the costs of making these changes to cope with the sort of the dynamics of the climate environment?
Like basically now, and the ones that we have been in the COP as negotiators this year, we've been working with the UN and different organizations very early. We were working in 2017-18. We were recognized by the UN as the best solution in the world for the global carbon market that has been approved today that has been approved last week in Glasgow. So basically committed to do it. So basically what we and considering the question you were doing, what the SMEs can do for climate action, I think the first we have to know is that there is a lot of ignorance about what companies can do. We have to bring from the basic point, what are the carbon markets, what the companies need to do first. And the first thing we need to do is to understand how much we are polluting, no? So they need to understand how much they are polluting. So they need to calculate the carbon footprint first thing. Then, and following the Andy's comments, and I think he's totally right. Obviously, we need to understand the strategy we want to plan towards our net zero targets. No, we need to have a target. When are we going to be net zero? And then to do that, we need to reduce. We need to see what I can reduce in my company to be more sustainable. So obviously, first thing is changing my energy to renewable sources, as Aaron was mentioning, no? And then my electromobility systems be put in place. No, I need to substitute all the things I can do following that strategy toward my strategy net zero, because obviously you cannot do it 1 year to another because you go bankrupt. No, so following your question, the companies can do a lot of things. It's just having common sense and analyzing our processes, how we can reduce emissions in our processes, and sustainable costs, environmental costs, sorry. So we have to analyze all that and put our efforts, if we are SMEs, first calculate our carbon footprint, and know how we are generating pain for the planet in the different aspects we have. So basically, from Climate Trade, what we do is we provide that expertise for more than 25 years, expertise on climate, and coming from the carbon markets primarily. But as Martin was mentioning, scope 3 is very important. Supply chain is going to be 80% of the emissions in the world. So what we do is we help with our technology to not only calculate, but help to compensate and generate a positive impact the companies in the projects they are supporting. Directly B2B, but also B2B2B and B2B2C through banks. For example, we work with 2 of the biggest banks in the world to support all their companies and all their customer citizens in that quest. No, so that's basically what I would suggest to the SMEs first thing. No.
Yeah, there's some work to be done in laying this out. I mean, just comment briefly on that. Is there a community of SMEs there that have responded to this? That, are there some peers that we can turn to and get examples from that, sort of grappling with this process? And Fran, I think possibly, maybe Doug, do you have some thoughts on how you've sort of done the numbers, I suppose? But Fran, yeah.
Well, basically, like the SMEs, and especially with the European new regulation on companies having to report sustainability every year of more than 250 employees. So companies from 250 employees already, they have to do some work on that. No, until now there were only listed companies to do it. Now more than 250 employees. So from that you have a cut of companies that they already have to be thinking on what to do on sustainability. No,
yeah.
SMEs are very concerned on what they have to do because they see that something is coming. There is a big wave coming, and that their bigger companies are doing this, and it will arrive to them. And I think that we are more conscious now, especially after the pandemic, that we think that or at least we can think that the pandemic, whether you think it comes from the zoonosis or it doesn't come from the zoonosis, it is something that it aware us that say this can be just an advice, or say take it easy because this is coming, and with climate is going to be much worse of what we have in pandemic, through the pandemic. So I think that the SMEs are taking small steps. So we need public authorities to push also the change, and every one of us be a little bit more concerned and be more. I like the concept conscious capitalism. No, I mean, we need to have capitalism, but it needs to be conscious capitalism. So I need that SMEs, every time they understand that the next decades are going to be about climate, and they are trying to put their feet on that also at their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Doug, do you think your work is helping to put the numbers together? And I think Aaron as well, your own work with.
Yeah. So I think that one of the big roadblocks we've seen is energy systems as a whole are very, very close. So this transition is we're going from distribution network operators to distribution system operators. It has just been very clunky and very difficult, especially for young business coming into that, to get access to and be able to promote their services into those. We are seeing changes happening with those, with the energy markets and with the energy systems, but they are slow and they are clunky, and there's so many different moving parts to it that it can be very difficult. So what we're doing a lot of work is with how do we work with the energy systems to be able to give the best solutions and actually provide our own solutions into that can help the small business that are taking on our technology to actually generate revenue through providing services. But also make sure that the infrastructure is there to promote more renewables onto the grid.
Aaron, any comment on that? I want to move to Julie in a minute if she's still with us, because asking her about some of the finance support that the banks are providing. But Aaron, just comment on the number side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the scale of the problem is so massive. I mean, we are looking at just electric vehicles, but there's the other pet project of National Grid is the Electrification of Heat, which is coming, where we are looking to electrify. I mean, heat constitute. If you look at a pie of 100%, if 30% comes from transport, I think 30 to 40% comes from heat. Yeah. And then you got the other part comes from industries and all of that. But I think but again, comes down to your consumer at home. If they are cold, they're going to switch on heating. They're not going to care if it's coming from at the wrong time or what's being used. And that's why it comes down to the point around technology, around making automating the whole experience for the consumer. And for businesses who our main interest is they don't want downtime. They want to make sure their business is running BAU. And yes, if they can make some carbon saving, they'll do that. But this is where technology provider solution and innovation needs to happen, where it kind of does it in the background. And what we are very proud of, what we're building is this charging nervous system, which kind of be that intelligent layer in the middle and takes data around user requirement. When does the user needs to drive? What time does the shift start? Looking at the carbon intensity of the grid. So we get that data from National Grid, knowing what generation mix has been used and when is it renewable generation the highest. And we could do so much clever stuff around forecast data from solar, forecast data from wind, and really predicting and forecasting when in the future, in the next day or so, we're going to have a lot of wind generation. Considering, if you look at Boris Johnson plan of building the Saudi of wind, Britain being called the Saudi of wind, where 40 gigawatt of wind in our portfolio. I think a lot of innovation needs to happen, and it's great. I mean, Innovate UK are absolute legend in that, and yes, and maybe Julie can give us access to more and more funds for companies like us to go and deliver this. We can make it happen.
Can I bring in Andy first, just to pick up on the Innovate UK bit, as there is some practical wind coming out of Westminster, I suppose, by saying Innovate UK have got some funding. Do you want to, and then Julie, you sort of say, well, from the finance sector, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, Innovate UK Edge, we're all about helping the business to understand what's available. Finance is a big area, not going to cover it all today, but taking the two major strands we look at, grant funding and private finance, will help a business to understand the landscape, first of all, in terms of local or more regional funding, and also national funding and international funding. And that could be public finances, or that could be, or even corporate programs to support technology development in the net zero area. So yeah, it's about helping a business to understand grant funding. It can be extremely baffling for them. We simplify it, break it down, and help them to get better at understanding it and approaching it and putting in proposals and that kind of thing. On the private finance side, we're all about helping a business to develop their pitch deck, get investor ready. And we do that through a number of initiatives. We have one-to-one coaching, but we also run a program called Pitch Fest, which helps businesses to, in a peer-to-peer environment, understand what it is they're trying to do and how better to pitch that to investors. That's proving to be really valuable for a lot of high growth potential businesses that we support.
Thank you. We've only got a couple of minutes left, and I do want to thank everybody. But Julie, could you just add sort of a piece here about the finance sector?
No, certainly, and I agree with Andy. I think there's a huge education piece here, because if you go out to small businesses today and ask them what their priorities are, only a small number would still say becoming more sustainable, because a lot of them are still looking to survive and thrive post-COVID. So we need to help them on that journey. And so how do we do that? Well, yes, it's by using the mainstream banks, the likes of Innovate, making sure we've got funds available, like I shared with you. Our £100 billion climate and sustainable funding will be showcased everywhere, so our customers know that we're looking to drive that transition to a low carbon economy and help them do that. But also, it's all that other wraparound support. So we've launched a climate accelerator, where we're helping those sustainable businesses, especially the innovative ones, get to the right get investment ready, because it might not be mainstream finance. They may be looking for investors, but there's lots of funds out there. But I think there's a huge education piece, and like Fran said, there's a huge gap between the haves and the have-nots. And government came out with some guiding principles this week, which I think are really, there's only 4 of them, so I'll share them quickly. One is the importance of consumer choice. We've got to give choices, and we can't make them do everything now. Obviously, it's got to be fair carbon pricing, which is the second guiding principle. The third one is government support for the most vulnerable, because we know this is expensive and they will need support there. And the final one is driving cost reductions to low carbon tech. So it's good that the government are throwing their weight at this. COP26 helps, but we're very much at the beginning of the journey. But great that there are so many funds out there, and all of the banks know that we've got to lead on this journey.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm not sure how this session is brought to a close. Do we keep an eye on, I think we're in these sessions until the flag goes up on the main stage bit. So Martin, I just wonder, given the comment there that Julie made about cost reduction, a lot of that, we've got some great tech coming through the systems. A lot of the costs are in manufacturing. Do you want to have a closing word on maybe what your program is any reflections on what we can do going forward?
Yeah, the vast majority of carbon reduction initiatives inside manufacturing are cost negative. I mean, they reduce cost, they cut your costs, and inside a very short period of time. I mean, I'll just give you an example. In North America, we have about 500 manufacturing sites in the automotive supply chains of Honda and Toyota and General Motors. And they, in this last year, have saved between them $21 million of operational costs, which is basically energy waste and water usage that they've been able to remove. So the vast majority of things that a business starting out on this journey can do will save the money. It's a relatively small amount that needs capital expenditure. I mean, you get to some very big pieces that do, and in particular industries, but for the vast majority of businesses, cutting carbon cuts cost, and it's just a very good thing to do.
I think that is an inspiring piece, that actually some of these things that are new, unfamiliar, if we handle them in the way, maybe as Andy's been talking about, we look at the plans and see what can be done. It can be beneficial as well as meeting sort of wider obligations. So, and it has been inspiring today to hear the pitches, and we certainly wish you all the best in the work that you've got ahead. And I hope we can share more as we tackle this uncertainty and enter into the new prospects that we have ahead of us hopefully in a much better world. I'm still looking for that. It's still flagged as now. Are there any other thoughts from it? But I've enjoyed talking with you, Julie. Maybe.
Yeah, I want to end on a positive, and I totally hear what Marty's just said, but we do get a lot of small businesses saying, I'd love an electric vehicle, but they're so expensive. I'd love to change my boiler, it's so expensive. So I do think there's a huge piece of work there to bring the cost of those sort of, if you like, sustainable projects down, and particularly in the small business arena. But let's end on a positive, because there's so many good initiatives out there, and we just need to make sure everybody knows about them, not just a few.
I heard of a salary sacrifice scheme for for electric vehicles as a proposal.
Yes, we've got one.
So there are ways of funding these things, and sort of the innovation and growth go together. It's maybe looking
just to chime in on from the EV side. Yes, buying electric vehicles today is more expensive because the battery prices is high. But I think if you look at the way a lot of the OEMs have already stopped producing or will be stopped producing ICE vehicles, which means a lot of the resources will be used in producing ICE, and the battery prices, you'll see a trend of decline. And I think the price parity will be reached by 2023, a couple of years' time, where it's going to cost the same to buy an EV for a medium range car, not the luxury Tesla I'm talking about. I'm talking about your Nissans and your Kias of the world, to your VW, which means it's going to cost the same. Until then, yes, there's subsidy is important. The plug-in grant the government has done is important. If you want to get a charger at home, there's £350 you get today. For a business, you get £400. So, compared to the Western world, like I follow the geopolitical quite closely. I think UK have done well, and there's a lot of schemes available to really help EV growth. And obviously, Norway is your ambition. Norway has now got 70-80%. And one of my colleagues went to Norway the other day, and everything is BAU. Like, it's so normal to have electric vehicles everywhere, and nobody panics, and nobody talks about.
I've just checked the program, and I think there is another set of roundtables on the starting and scaling that we can leave this one now and maybe move into a new set of sessions. So thank you for your support and your contributions this morning, and look forward to hearing more both later today and in the time ahead. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.